not because you nutted, but because that's how you connected with your woman in one way.
You just said nutted.
I just
okay?
said fucking nutted. Still
Well,
learning this podcast game. All right, welcome back to You Incompletely. Well, that's not even the podcast name. You Incomplete Me. I'm Madison, and
I am Ryan.
And what we want to kind of go over today is like kind of arguments. We want to get into specifics and see if we can remember. I mean, we've been together 10 years, so let's see if we can remember some of our biggest arguments, kind of what caused them, how we handled them in the moment, what we learned from them, how it changes to how we kind of have discussions now. And we were kind of called to do this because there's a couple of relationships in our life right now that are struggling. Just other people's partnership and marriage are struggling, and they're coming to us for advice. And the only way that we know how to give advice is just to share what we've been through, right?
Yeah. Well, on that note, a lot of people think 10 years isn't a long time, but I want to preface it that Maddie and I have worked with each other every single day for the last 10 years.
We did the math.
Yes.
We did the math, and we have spent more time together than somebody who's been married 25 years. So technically we're like a quarter of a century in.
Yeah, so we spend every day together, work, we commute together, we grocery shop together, we bank together. We've done so much together. So on that just timeline of 10 years, most people see their significant other after a 9 to 5 or on the weekends where we get all of that. So there's a lot that we've gone through. But I think most of our arguments have risen up or have happened because of just really stressful times in our environment.
Yeah.
And it usually is projection. So if I'm going through a hard time and I don't know how to handle it, I usually project it on you. And some people, I've seen it so many times, it's not you, it's me, right? And it's true. It usually is them, but you do play a role in how the argument plays out. And if I get to accelerate through the problem faster, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If I think really quickly, Ryan, I think we haven't had, like, now that we're past all these arguments, I don't think we've had an argument that was really on a serious topic. It's been serious times in our life where there was a lot at stake, but the actual argument itself wasn't really anything serious now that we've gotten past it. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know the definition of argument or fight. I would say disagreements or not being on the same page.
Or crazy thought, let's just call it communication.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like positives and negatives. It is what it is.
Well, I find that you tend to disagree with me and argue with me more. And you could correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's just when I'm being an absolute, just a schmuck. I'm not exercising. I'm waking up late. I'm eating unhealthy. I'm not doing what I said I was going to do. So you can kind of pick up off that energy, and then to pick on me when I'm the weakest. So I notice when I'm feeling good and I have momentum, you have that momentum with me.
Yeah, momentum goes in either direction. If it's going, it's going, and it's hard to stop the direction that it started in.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah, I can see that,
So what's the biggest argument you think we've gotten into?
I was trying to think of the biggest one we've gotten into, and what kind of just started to run through my mind was a couple stories. So I was thinking, why don't we just go story for story and see what memories we can dig up?
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. So the first kind of argument that popped into my mind when we were talking about ones we wanted to discuss was we were in our gym, and to preface this, we were both 21 and 22 years old. We were maybe 2 years into our relationship. We opened up this business. I had never made more than probably $400 a month, and now we had $10,000 in monthly expenses go through. And I was never in a business world. You grew up in a business family. I didn't ever think I would end up there. So here we were, $10,000 in expenses every month, plus the debt we accumulated to open up this gym. Now we're trying to figure out what's marketing, what's sales, how do you fulfill on clients? And I'm kind of losing it internally. I'm gaining weight, eating like crap. You and I probably weren't super physically intimate, as the gym moved on. And so I was on edge, right? I was just trying so hard to be good and move forward and help you achieve your goal, because I kind of just tagged along. I'm like, this sounds like fun. I want to help. And I wanted to help you have a purpose. And I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. I'm kind of like failing or not exceeding as fast as I thought I would, because I was always told I was the smart one growing up. And so if I couldn't get something quick, it really affected me and I didn't understand it. So it was kind of like an identity crisis. But long story short, I don't remember what the heck it was. You probably said something and then I snapped back, probably like moody. It was probably like, right before I taught a 7 p.m. class. I was exhausted all day because we were up at 5 a.m. teaching classes. You said something, I snapped back. And then if I remember correctly, Rye, you checked me on my reaction. You checked me and you're like, like something like, you're not going to talk to me that way here. Something like that, right? And I was like, oh shit. And I was like instantly like, probably like childhood trauma, disappoint daddy mode or something. And I like lost it. Like that was my last straw that day. I burst into tears. This was at like 6:55 at night and I had to teach a class at 7. So I had 5 minutes to get my shit together. Ryan had to talk to a client. So I think I hid behind the door against the wall while I was like trying to like get the tears out and like I'm like super pasty white. So my eyes are all red and I can't fake that I wasn't crying. Like everybody's going to know. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
One of our clients, Anna Rita, walked in right in the middle of it was just, that was the first time I was like, whoa, I fucked up. I felt really gross about how I reacted and it was nothing special that caused it. Do you remember how you felt during that? What was your perception?
Well, to give you credit, it was very difficult. We were 20 and 21 and we had $10,000 in expenses. This is the first time we both started a company that was ours. I came from a business family, but that didn't mean I was a business owner. I became a business owner. And so I was going through a lot of changes and I think I gave you the leeway to change a lot, right? And with that being said...
Yes, you were patient, is that what you mean?
I was patient
Yes.
with you because you were trying. How can I ever disrespect somebody who is trying their best? If somebody is slacking off and I know they're slacking off, then they're going to disappoint me and I'm going to let them go. And that could have happened with us. That could have been a path where I've seen many couples start a business together and they start a business and then they let each other go. Like, this is not working. But you were trying every single day. And I remember Maddie was actually breaking out in rashes on her face. And you were so stressed. And so, you talk about this was an argument or a fight. I just gave you leeway to be you and work through it because I knew you were going to try. And it's not that I checked you, because I did check you. It doesn't make sense that you speak to me that way, right? It's just not allowed, because if I allow that behavior, then it's going to keep going, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. You speaking to me that way. I'm your partner. I'm right here beside you. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to do that stuff, but learn to contain it and be better. Especially within a relationship, you're allowed to be emotional. That is okay. You're about to give birth to our child and you're going to scream, you're going to be in pain. That is okay. But if you're in business, be better. It's a sport. Business is a sport, right? It is a game. And if you're my partner in this game, you're my quarterback, you're whoever, it's just be better. And I knew you were going to be better, right? And so I would never hold that against you. And, you bring it up like you had this big breakdown, but you didn't. You cried, you were upset, and then 5 minutes later, you went out, you taught a class, and we resolved it, right? And I never would hold anything against you. I cut a lot of people slack. I've noticed that with me. I cut a lot of people slack because when I really screw up in life, I hope somebody cuts me slack.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Right? It's out of pure selfishness, right?
Yeah.
It's not this big, I'm a noble person or anything like that. I cut people slack and I accept people's apologies even as they mess up, because one day I'm going to mess up and one day I'm going to make a mistake, and I hope that they can forgive me and they can give me slack. So that's not a big argument in my mind. It's just a part of growing as a couple and as a business ownership together.
It's funny how the perception of it was very different. how we interpret it now. So now your story. What comes to your mind when we talk about arguments or times we were snappy at each other?
Wow. Well, mine is a little bit more petty. A little bit more petty. It is, I think we were in, it's always little things with me.
Are you going to say the Niagara Falls story?
It's Niagara Falls. There's a couple stories, but I think the premise is, okay, so Niagara Falls was, if you're in Canada, you know Niagara Falls is just iconic, right? The Canadian side is better than the US side. I'm sorry. It's just the truth, right? But Maddie and I were in school, and I always used to like to plan adventures with Maddie. So I booked a hotel to go to Niagara Falls, and we were going to spend the weekend there. We were in a little bit of an argument beforehand, and I remember I still picked you up to go to Niagara Falls. And we're in the car, and it was just like tense in the car. And you're like, fine, let's not do this. And you just said that, and it really upset me. And I just ignored you all the way there. Like I retreated into myself, right? And then you knew that was just the wrong thing to say, right? You felt bad, so you kept trying to talk with me, and I just ignored you, right? I just retreated into myself. I'm the type of person that retreats into myself to collect myself so I don't say anything stupid.
Yeah, it was one of those really weird, silent, uncomfortable car rides.
Yes.
And I'm like trying to make jokes and pull you out, and it's like, oh, I'm just looking like a dummy. Nothing's working.
Yeah, I'm the type of person where if I'm really hurt, I retreat into myself and I conserve my energy and I don't say anything stupid.
Yeah.
But if there's times where I feel like you're attacking me, then I'll check you like we did in the gym when you're having a breakdown. But on that note, I retreated into myself. We get to Niagara Falls. I'm still ignoring you. And we get to the hotel room, and I just remember you breaking down and crying, right? And you're like, why? What's wrong? What happened? And I remember just telling you, I'm upset because you just made me feel small. I put this together. I did this for you. I wanted to have a good time. And I've noticed with me, and I'm only going to speak on my behalf as a man, it's never really the big things that bother me, because, I have employees that say things about me, and, you go in the world and you get into fights and you do these, and those things don't bother me because I know it's a part of the game. But when I'm trying to be a good person and trying to be a better person for you, and it's the little things that bother me, right? And that's the biggest thing. Like, you make me feel weak or small. Mm-hmm. Right? And when I'm just trying to impress you, everything that I do in my life is constantly an impression game. Obviously, I want to make myself proud, but with my partner, I'm like, do you like this thing I built? Do you like this car that I bought you? Do you like that I paid the bills this month? Do you like, it's constantly an impression game. And when you're like, oh, this is stupid, I'm just like, well, I don't want to do this for you again.
Yeah. And
it sounds so silly, but as a man, I do so much for you. And I want to be validated for it. Yeah. I remember I bought you an $800 car when I only had $900 in my account, because I wanted your life to be easier. And all you had to do was, Ryan, this is so wonderful. Thank you so much. And you did that. And then I bought you another car, and then I did more things, and I keep doing more things for you because you validate the good behaviors. But it usually is when I try to do something for you and I get pissed off is when you're like, that's shit, right? And I noticed that with employees too, and this is just a sidestep, is like when an employee puts a lot of effort into something and they propose it to me and I'm like, whatever, right? Yeah. Then they get upset. So I have to be careful that saying like, I know you did a good job on this. I know you tried your best. Like we have to take a detour. Yeah. Right? And it's the same thing for our relationship.
Yeah, I think we learned that point fairly quickly because we did it so much to each other, because we had such high volumes of seeing each other. There were so many conversations and discussions where we invalidated each other's, I guess, opinions or actions or achievements, not because we weren't proud or didn't love or like the person. It was just because that was our automatic reaction. And we just shared our automatic reaction unfiltered.
Yes.
Right? And so the first step in fixing that for us was filtering, right? Just slowing down and not reacting to what the other person says. And then what's cool is, I think for me, now that we've practiced that enough, the filter, I don't have to filter. It's just actually my true reaction now is to listen and not judge with you, because I've practiced that way, which I think was really cool.
What if you noticed that in arguments or just our day-to-day life, when we get into an argument or we get into a negative rut, that fixes it more quickly? Instead of it lasting longer, what have you noticed that accelerates it to get us out of it?
Well, what works for me to de-escalate you, right? Because that's usually what happens when I am overreacting. I don't know if there's much that you can do to help me. Usually I need to realize that I'm overreacting, and then I'm not proud of myself, so I usually stop and I'll go away and I'll calm down. I think that's how I do it for me. I mean, you might notice something different, but for you, what you can't do, what I can't do, is sit here and say, do you see what you're doing right now? Do you see how you're behaving? Is this really helpful? Right? In the moment, I can't tell you what you're doing wrong because you're smart and you know it. And that's why half the reason you're upset is the way that you're reacting and the way that the solution or the situation is unfolding. Half the reason, right? It's like you're stressed about being stressed. Now you're stressing about the fact that you're stressed. And it's like you can't win if you're upset about being upset. And so it's just like, I'm not going to point out facts. I'm not going to point out logic. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to listen. I'm going to let you get it out. And then we wrap some kind of bow on it. Whether the bow completes the discussion that day or the bow says we'll come back to it. You just wrap it in a bow. We just say, we're both on the same side. I understood you. I heard you. You said X, Y, and Z, right? Like reinforce that you're understanding what their points that they actually said, which guess what, guys, requires you to actually listen to what they said so you can repeat it. And then you at least, you just feel heard. You had an emotion, you wanted to be felt heard, and then you were. And then half of the time, an argument doesn't even need a solution, to be honest.
No.
Maybe most of the time, it doesn't even need a solution.
I think what I've noticed on my end that helps me get through something is the best way to say it as a man is you just not talking. Let me get out what I need to get out. I don't need you to interject and talk about, you use this word wrong, or do you remember this time? Yeah. I don't need that. I just need you to be quiet, sit there, listen to me, and by the time I get all the way to the end, I'm gonna be probably like, thank you for giving me the space to speak. This was my fault that I overreacted. I appreciate you giving me the time to speak.
Yeah. I've
noticed, and you've gotten a lot better at giving me that space to speak. But I've noticed with women, it's a constant dance, right? Right? As I'm talking, then you talk, then I talk, then you talk. That's not how this goes. Let me say what I have to say.
Yeah.
Everything I do is well thought out. Everything that I say is well thought out. I'm not just this person stumbling through life. So when you think you know me better than me, that's when you've gone from a place of curiosity to judgment.
To superiority, right? Like
yes.
Almost like a mother and a child now. Like,
yes.
Are you done? Can we move on?
Yes.
Are you having a temper tantrum? Right? That's just not helpful.
And if a man were to speak to me that way, it would enter the physical realm. That's what women don't understand. It's the physical realm is off limits for women. Right? So if you kept disrespecting me and poking at me and, hey, you do this, you do this, you do this, and I'm just retreating into myself and I stop talking, I'm done. I don't want to engage anymore. But you keep poking at me, you keep poking at me. If a man were to do that,
yeah.
It would enter the physical realm. You'd get hit.
Yeah.
But you can't hit your woman. And I'm not saying that's okay, but I'm saying is you need to learn, especially, and I've learned with you as well, you need to talk and lay out the problem as well. Yeah. You need to say, hey, I think this is the issue. Yeah. Do you see it? And you definitely need to get out what you need to get out, right? But, and it's a dance. I really think it's a dance because sometimes it's me being quiet and listening to you.
You know what I would say like an argument hack is? Like just hold your tongue. And when they stop talking, don't say anything. Because most of the time, up until that point, so somebody goes and they do their spiel, whether they're calm and collected or whether they're losing their shit, they say their spiel, and then the pause insinuates that it's your time to chime in. I would say pause still, because they're going to go again, and then they're going to say the actual truth.
Yes.
A lot of the times, it's just superficial, maybe hurtful in the beginning, maybe unclear and contradictory in the beginning, and you could probably sit there and analyze it and write an essay about how what they said doesn't make sense and isn't true and they shouldn't feel that way and you never did this. But it's like, let them say it, pause, let them go again. And I guarantee you get much closer to the actual problem so much more quickly. So much more quickly. Because the less you talk, the less fuel you're giving them to react to, the less triggers you're potentially bringing up in them. So just let them like word vomit, but one word vomit is not enough. You got to do it 2 times. You got to do it 3 times. Then you can interject once you've gotten the full picture. Like you really don't understand. You'll never know why somebody's upset until you let them figure out why they're upset themselves. Because sometimes they don't even know.
The biggest hack, one of the biggest secrets I have learned from running businesses, having a successful marriage, is the tongue is a beast that wants to escape its cage. Just stop talking. Just stop talking and watch and listen, and most of your problems will go away. Most of them.
Yep.
Most of our thoughts, and there's been studies done on this, are negative thoughts. Because we start formulating ideas of what we're interpreting, what you're thinking or what you're saying.
Yeah.
But in reality, if I just listen, I actually know what's happening.
Yep.
If I watch, I actually know what's happening instead of me interpreting it.
Yeah.
The tongue is a beast that wants to escape its cage. And I'm an extrovert and I love soaking up energy and talking with people, but I've learned as an extrovert, I have to be more curious about other people.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about you. I'm very curious about our marriage. I'm very curious about our businesses. I'm not judging it.
Yeah.
And I'm here to keep learning about you and our life. And I'm not saying, hey, I know you and this is how you're always going to be, right?
Yeah.
I want to speak life into what we're trying to build.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be like, well, you acted this way in the past and you're going to keep acting this way. I would say, hey, this is what happened. I know we can be better for the future. I'm speaking life into what we're doing. I'm not trying to be a negative person. And that only happens from truly listening, just like you said.
Yeah, we say it all the time. If you want to change the output, you have to change the input. Most of the time, we complain about the output not changing, not realizing that it just takes one simple tweak on the input. Now, it doesn't necessarily change the output right away, but you have to realize that it stems from the input. So if you're putting all your effort into being unhappy and complaining about the output, and you've put almost no effort into actually analyzing the input and changing your input, how you react, how you respond, the different tactics you try, and actually sticking to it. Because like there's so many people that come to us for advice. They're like, I tried that. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. No. You resentfully tried it one time, being annoyed because you were fed up. You didn't come from a place of love, patience, and understanding. I'm trying this technique to help this person, not be selfish and change my output. Right? So I think it's funny because a lot of people will come to us and they'll say, I just don't understand. I don't understand why this happened. I don't understand why this person said this and did this to me. Stop trying to understand somebody else. You will never 100% understand everybody else. Stop trying to understand and pick apart their actions. You are wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, and you're just creating like unnecessary anxieties in your own mind. And then you're creating an entire backstory in your head that you could create a play with. That's not even true. You have to give, and I try to give you the space to understand you the time, not on my timeline, to understand you. You need to understand you. You need to understand why you did what you did. If you can't understand why you did what you did, why do I keep asking you what you did? Why did you do, why? Yeah, and I found myself being that person, and I know quite a few women that are like the why women, right? Tell me why. We think we're helpful because that's what we need. Right? Like we need to work through our emotions and understand the whys. But I find with you, you don't know why immediately. That's why we have the conversation and the discussion and the disagreement in the first place. If we had the answers, we wouldn't have got to that point. Right? So take the space, figure out your why. When you're ready, then you can tell me why and we can figure it out. Sometimes I don't even need a why because you've already done it yourself and I can just feel the energy shift. It's just so funny how it's coming from understanding somebody when really it's just giving them the space to understand themselves, because that's hard enough. Like, I think you're asking too much to ask why all the time.
Yeah, and you're not always entitled to the answer.
That's a good point.
You want to understand someone so deeply, sometimes they're not ready to share it with you.
Yep.
And there's a lot of time, it took me a long time to be open with you, and there's still parts that I'm trying to figure out about myself. And then as I'm figuring out who I am, you want me to be open with you at the same time? It's a dance. Yeah. Let me figure out me. You're part of my life, right? And that's how I think.
Yeah.
I'm the main character in my life. Let me figure out my battles. I love you. Awesome. Right? But you're the main character in your life.
Yeah.
I have my own battles and you have your own battles, but we're here to, it's not you and me versus each other. It's you and me versus the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you know when somebody is going against each other, you know when a relationship's going downhill is when they start saying negative things about the person. Like, you're this, you're that, you're this, right? Instead of saying, we tend to do this and it equals this, right?
Or even I'm this, I'm that. Just taking it to yourself.
You know when a relationship is going downhill when the other person like, you're not getting healthy. You're not doing what I said. You're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
And you know a relationship is going in that direction, in the negative direction, when that person's not taking responsibility. I remember one time we were first dating, and I remember I came to your house. It was late at night, and you had red hair at the time. It was big red hair. And I remember I came home to your house, and I looked at you, and it was such a rude thing to say in my head. I remember. And I was like, wow, that's unattractive. And then I instantly stopped myself, and I'm like, how rude of you. Like, look in the mirror. Are you attracted to yourself right now? And I was about 230 pounds. I'm like, you're not. So you're projecting. You're being rude because that's the way you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
And every single time we go through a blip in life, it's usually because I feel so shit about myself that it affects my businesses, it affects you, it affects everybody. So I always look in the mirror.
It affects your view on the world. And now you're clouded with a lens, and you couldn't possibly view anything or anybody any different than the way that you view yourself.
Yeah, I avoid cynical people because I know how they feel about themselves. They say things, they talk shit about humanity. All people are shit, right? The economy sucks. They're constantly making blanket negative statements because that's how they feel about themselves. You avoid people like that. Mm-hmm. And there's so much opportunity out there. There's so many amazing people out there. There's so many amazing conversations and employers, employees, whatever that may be. There's so many amazing things out there, but we choose to focus on the negative. And I think the same thing for our arguments. We never are focusing on the negative. Like, you said this to me, how dare you? Yeah. There's been a lot of disrespect or negative words said between the both of us, but it wasn't. You can feel when somebody's saying something at you versus when somebody's saying
just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, versus when somebody's projecting it.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we've given each other the space and respect enough to navigate an argument.
And just like chill out. Just stop taking everything so personally. Right? Like, oh my God, he said you're naggy. End of the world. Maybe you were a little bit, and if you're offended by it, maybe you actually weren't. So then he doesn't mean it, and he's just saying something to say something to fill space because you asked an annoying question that he didn't have an answer to. So he came up with a random answer for you because you asked. Right? It's just like, just chill.
It's funny because I hear guys all the time. It's, I don't get enough sex from my wife. Right? I don't get enough insert from my wife. Right? And then the wives will be like, well, this, and that. And they get upset. Mm-hmm. And usually get upset because it's the truth. Mm-hmm. When if you were to say something like, you're not 6 foot, you haven't built businesses. I'm like, yeah, I have. Yeah, I'm 6 foot. It's you're telling me something that's not the truth. I don't need to be confident. It's a fact. I'm 6 foot. You couldn't tell me that I'm not that. You couldn't tell me that I haven't built businesses. You can't tell me that because I've done it.
Yeah.
Right? And usually I notice women get upset when men tell truths in a very straightforward statement. It's like, I don't get enough blowjobs from you. And they're like, well, you don't do this. Well, usually when a man says that and you get upset, usually it's the truth.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you don't give me enough this. You don't give me enough that. I promise all women that if you give your man what he needs in the sexual realm, he has to be a good man. Like, it's just not, you have to be in the mood. But if you give him what he needs, you will get what you want.
Yep. You're much happier.
Yes.
You're more lovey and flirty, and it's not because you got something. It's just simply because that's how you connect.
Yeah, that's
or a way that you connect. That's it. It's just you feel more connected, more appreciative, more gratitude. Not because you nutted, but because that's how you connected with your woman in one way.
You just said nutted.
I just
okay?
said fucking nutted. Still
Well,
learning this podcast game.
But I think I think the biggest thing is that men are
First, is it nutted or nut?
Yeah, you could say nutted like the past tense. I nutted. Right? And then I nut.
Hold a cup of tea
and then
with
I
your
nut is present tense. Well, what's future tense? I'm going to no.
No, nut. Let's just stop saying it. There's a lot of people with nut allergies nowadays. Let's move on.
I really think that men are physical creatures. I like a woman in a sundress. I like when my woman looks good. It makes me feel good about myself. I'm a physical creature, right? There would be a lot less fast and red cars and tall buildings if there wasn't women around. We constantly are showboating for women, and because we're physical creatures. I'm a physical creature, and I need to have that physical connection with you.
Mm-hmm.
Or I noticed with you and with any woman that I've been with is if I'm emotionally there with them and I'm holding their hand and we're watching a movie and we're having a really good conversation, they feel satisfied.
Yeah.
I don't feel satisfied from that. I feel satisfied by having physical intimacy with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that simple. And if you don't give that to me, I'll feel distant from you. It's just that simple. And women are like, "Well, I can't keep up with your sexual appetite." It isn't about sexual appetite. It's about connection and intimacy.
Yeah, there's no rule book of saying, I mean, sure, do they want it multiple times a day, every day? Sure. Is that what we're saying you need to do? No, it's just when it's there, be present, enjoy it, and make it quality, which a lot of people don't. They either just avoid it, or they try to rush through it. And I'm no exception from that. Quite a few times we've had to learn, or I have had to learn how to be present and enjoy it. And then it's not, for women, it's like, it's not about being in the mood. It's about knowing how to get in the mood.
Yes.
No, I'm never just like ready to go. It's like, no, I want to enjoy the process of getting in the mood. That's half the fun. And that took us quite a while to learn. But
on that note, because we're on arguments, I've noticed I've gotten into more arguments and more issues when we aren't being properly physically intimate.
absolutely.
You're
Just more, you're more irritable.
Yes.
Right. And you know what? I'll take responsibility. I'm more irritable too, because I know I'm doing something wrong. I know that I'm not pulling my weight, if that makes sense, in like the sexual sense. I know that that's not right of me as a wife. And so I get more irritable and on edge. And then as a woman, you kind of play in your head. You're like, oh my God, it's been so long. I have to do it. But now that I have to do it, I really don't want to do it. Maybe I'll just push it off a little bit longer. Oh, Valentine's Day is around the corner. I'll just wait till Valentine's. And then you get in this cycle. And then we're both like, we just need it. You just need it at one point. It's not even that you want it. You just need it because you've kind of put so many subconscious walls in front of each other. And it's not even that big of a deal.
Well, if we're not having physical intimacy, then we're just friends, just like anybody else. That's what makes us truly unique. And obviously other nuances, but physical intimacy is a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And just a funny story about this. So my mom and my dad have been together 30 plus years. They've built a multi-million-dollar operation. And my mom's been a stay-at-home mom. They've traveled the world. They've touched every single continent. They've done everything together, right? And my mom, if I were to call my mom right now and say, like, if my dad asked you to make you a sandwich, would you make it? She's like, of course I would.
Why did he call you? I'll make it right now.
She would literally do anything for my father, anything. So I remember we're getting to a place in our relationship now where she's gonna be a grandmother. And so we're just talking about life a little bit more. And I was talking about how men need physical intimacy, right? I said, I need physical intimacy from Madison in order to feel connected to her. And I was driving my car, right? And she's in the back seat and I have my cousin beside me. And I'm talking to her. I'm like, men need physical intimacy or they don't feel connected. They feel very disconnected. And then she puts her hand on my shoulder because she's behind me. And she's like, you don't need to worry about me and your father. She's like, he's fine. And I was like... Oh, I didn't want to hear that, but also good job, Mom.
Yeah. And they've been married 30 years.
Yeah, 30.
And they were also an arranged marriage.
Yes.
They had to learn to love each other. They didn't know each other at all when they met and got married.
Yes. My father and my mother are just regardless of my father or my mother, like Daljit and David are just awesome human beings. They are just, and it gives me goosebumps. And I think everyone gets a little bit sentimental about their father. Like my father is just a wonderful human. And my mother is just a wonderful person. And they came together, and I just love seeing them together, because you get in a rut in life where you think you know everything. You think you know people, you think you know things, but I see my parents together, and I constantly see them together, and I'm learning things that I applied to my marriage. Vice versa, right? My dad said to me the biggest change he ever had when he started reaching the highest pinnacles of his success when he had kids, right? Not when he had a wife, when he had kids. So he said, we helped change him a lot too. So yeah, it's a lot. But I think a lot of times arguments, going back to the original point of this podcast, was arguments usually stem from something that isn't this.
Yeah.
It usually stems from this.
Yeah.
Right? I notice a lot of times big arguments stem from the fact that we aren't being physically intimate, that you aren't taking the time to be physically intimate with me, and also in some way, shape, or form, you are undermining me and making me feel weak. Mm-hmm. Your only job as my wife is to make me feel strong, and genuinely, not fake it.
Yeah.
Right? You make me feel strong, make me feel empowered, because if I'm strong and empowered and I'm helping people, one of those people I'm going to help is you. So you get the benefit of it. Yeah. So why does it hurt you to not make me better in life?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, if an argument escalates because of me, it's because I've reacted instead of listened. And I think if an argument escalates on your end, you've escalated me, is probably because you're not letting me. I like to ask a lot of questions. You're not letting me ask questions that might be silly to you. That's usually what it boils down to for us. But on my last note, we can wrap up soon. I just want to bring it back to our Niagara Falls story.
Yes.
Because I think, just stop taking things so serious. So we had this hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, because of bad weather, I don't know, 2-hour drive to Niagara Falls, completely silent. I was trying to kiss ass, get Ryan in a better mood. Nothing was working. He went into a gas station and got an apple, and he's munching on an apple.
There was a Boy Scout selling apples, so I bought it, right? Like, you gotta support him.
Yeah, he's angrily munching an apple driving to Niagara Falls. And anyway, we park, we grab our stuff, we're walking to the hotel, and I dressed up to look good and make him feel special. So I had a dress on, a nice long trench coat, and I had boots with heels on, and we're walking in the parking lot, and I eat shit. Ryan, it's one of those arguments where Ryan's kind of walking in front of me, but he doesn't want to be rude and walk all the way in front of me, but he's definitely in front of me and trying to let me know he's in front of me and doesn't want to walk with me. And I'm behind him fucking, this trip is gonna suck. How am I gonna save this? And I'm in my head carrying my bag, and he's trying to carry my bag, but also be a gentleman, but still be mad at me. And I just trip. I fall on my fucking face, and I just lay there for a second. I'm like, maybe this is how we break the ice. And so I stand up, and it's a little bit of tension broken. And then I think that really helped us. By the time we got to the hotel room, you were like, "Aw, poor puppy." And you're like, okay, let's talk. So moral of the story is a little bit of humor doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, well, you missed one part. I helped you up when you fell,
he did,
right?
He did not keep walking.
I looked at you on the ground you're dead, bitch. You're
dead to me. That one. Yeah. You deserved that one.
I helped you up. I picked you up.
He then threw his apple core at me.
Yeah. I spat on you. I helped you up. Yes. And I think the thing is when I love somebody, I can be angry with them, but I could never hate them. There's some people in my family, you have those family members where those aunts and uncles, you could just cut off. But you have some people in your family where you're I hate you sometimes, but I love you and I can never leave you, right? And that's like you, I'm I hate you right now, but I love you and I'm not gonna let you be on the ground, right? You know what I mean? Sometimes my siblings will be saying dumb shit to me and I'm like, God, I fucking hate you. But if anybody were to mess with you, I would fuck them up. Yeah. I can say shit to you, but no one else can, right? Yeah. So it's like that. And it's me and you fighting. I'm fighting with you. I'm you gotta still put your leg on me when we're about to sleep. Yeah. Right? I love you.
Hold my hand angrily while we watch this movie.
But Yeah, I really think that to really have a deep, meaningful relationship, you need to argue, you need to fight. And if somebody usually blows up at you, and that's a red flag to me. Just ending on that. That's a red flag to me. It's like randomly they say something to you, like 10 weeks later, 2 months later, like, hey, you do this? Like, why couldn't we have discussed this at the time? How you were going? Like, am I that much of a villain?
Why don't we do the next episode on red flags? We can do a full red flag episode.
Am I that much of a villain that you had to wait? Like, stop trying to project your weakness onto me, right? But anyways, we're wrapping that up. I did pick her up off the floor and we went inside. She cried. We had makeup, sex, and everything was good. All was right with the world. And then we went on a Ferris wheel. Okay?
So good.
Yes.
Which we can tell a story about Maya next time on the Ferris wheel. All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Yes, thanks, guys.